Hey, welcome back to the Mining Pod. I got Matt and Charlie. We're doing our news roundup. We haven't done this in a while. I think the last one was back in July. It was not with Charlie at the time. It was just Matt and I. But Charlie, welcome back. We are talking about Marapool mining an invalid block. We're going to talk about some of the new ASICs coming out from the larger manufacturers, and then also dive into some ordinals with Charlie. Did you know that you can make more money by merge mining other networks? Check out makemoremoneymining.com for information on BIPs 300 and 301, a proposal to bring more revenue to Bitcoin miners through sidechains and merge mining called drive chains. Increase your mining revenues and learn more about participating in Bitcoin governance by visiting makemoremoneymining.com. Are you a miner who wants to activate Bitcoin improvements? Check out activation.watch. See what Bitcoin improvements the Bitcoin community, developers, and miners are considering, and show support by signaling for one of many BIPs up for consideration. Activation.watch. Filecoin's mission is to create decentralized, efficient, and robust storage infrastructure for humanity's information. Join the Filecoin Foundation team October 3rd through 5th for Phil Vegas, the first major Filecoin community event in North America in 2023, to explore how to adapt data storage for an AI-centric future. Participate in conversations and hear keynotes focus on the importance of data integrity in the world of artificial intelligence. Register to attend and learn more at phil-vegas.io, and make sure to use promo code MiningPod.
Hey Mining Pod, I'm Lee Bratcher, President of the Texas Blockchain Council. The Texas Blockchain Summit is now the North American Blockchain Summit. The same emphasis on policy, energy, and Bitcoin mining, but now expanded by working with our partners across the country. We've got great sponsors lined up like Riot, Marathon, GDA, CleanSpark, BitDeer, Lancium, Cormint, Compass, HTS, Crypto Power, Priority Power, Sonoda, and many more. Solidify your next deal or JV, or just come for the networking on November 15th through 17th in Fort Worth, Texas, for the 3rd annual North American Blockchain Summit. We'll see you there.
Let's first start off talking about this Marapool block situation. Matt, I'm going to hand this off to you to explain to all of us, and then we'll dive into it.
So I guess for context, like Marathon, very large public miner, right? And they run their own pool. One of the jobs of a pool, at least these days, is to create the block template, right? And the block template is key in deciding what transaction order goes into the block, right? And then you do the hashing and you try to find a valid block. Well, in a particular block that Marapool broadcasts to everybody, it basically had an invalid transaction ordering, where one transaction that spent a certain output should have come after another one, right? And so it made it at the block invalid. This became, I think, some pretty popular news because Marathon is a public miner. People have strong opinions maybe if this should have been tested in a certain way, or if they should be held to kind of like a high standard for being a pool. But all in all, honestly, it's kind of like a nothing burger, because Bitcoin software works as Bitcoin software does. It's very resilient. People discarded, they found the right chain, right? This block was invalid, and that is how people saw it. And that's the gist of it. I mean, any thoughts, you two?
Yeah, I do have like one small interesting observation, which is, pools of mine invalid blocks before. F2 pool did it this past spring. But what I see that there's experimentation going on, and I think that's very interesting and a point of attention. So that's the kind of my one. It's not a hot take. It's a lukewarm take.
It was a lukewarm take. Okay, I think that this doesn't really matter too much. I don't know why people got so upset about it. There was a bunch of tweets saying why didn't you do this on testnet? Newsflash, they were doing this on testnet beforehand, but they pushed some stuff to prod. And I actually applaud them for having some fun and trying to figure something out. I'm sure there's some people who are looking at Marathon's revenue or stockholders, whatever, and weren't super pleased with this. But that is the cost of innovation. Sometimes you miss a block or you mess something up. To me, this was also sort of a nothing burger, but definitely everyone was interested in it yesterday. Just another revelation of how deep we are in the bear market, where this was something that people wanted to talk about.
Was the stock price affected? I didn't look. I was just in case one of you did. Was it?
I'll look in a second, but I don't.
I'd be pretty surprised if it was, but I don't know. I guess it could be. But yeah, I mean, Bitcoin's supposed to be resilient, right? To be able to withstand state level attacks. If we can't handle a simple invalid block, right, we have much bigger problems. And so the fact that everything worked as usual and we just continue TikTok next block, positive thing, we move on.
Stock price went up yesterday from $8.08 to $8.88. So maybe they should mine more invalid blocks. Okay. Let's leave that there, and we're going to keep talking about miners. And as promised on the interview show I did earlier this week, we're going to go through some of the new machines that have come out. For reference, Bitmain launched its new flagship S21 series in Hong Kong. Charlie, were you in Hong Kong for that?
No, some other Luxor folks were, but yeah, I mean, it looked like a fun time. Looked like a lot of good food. And again, Luxor actually spent the previous couple weeks in Portugal, so we've circumnavigated the earth in the past month.
Wow. Portugal to Hong Kong.
Yeah.
There's probably like some conquistador joke in there.
Yeah.
Okay.
And that is an actual photo of the S21 kind of superimposed. And I believe this information is largely correct. I saw kind of our rig team going back and forth, making sure we were trying to get as accurate as possible.
Yeah, for reference, 17.5 joules per terahash, 200 terahash per second, 3,500 watts. This was announced last month, I guess. This month. That says August 13th, 2023, but that was just announced like a week or two ago. Then it looks like the normal shoebox miner that we've come to know from Bitmain. So design specs haven't changed that much. I've seen a few things. Shout out to Altair Tech. I saw them kind of going through some pictures, and they noticed that I think the fans are a little bit more powerful, or maybe even twice as powerful as old fans. So that's nice. That is nice. It could be quite a bit louder, however. This, of course, comes after S19 XP and S19K have come out. A lot of people have been purchasing those. Okay, we'll leave that for a second, and then let's go talk about the other miners that are also coming out. So Bitmain put out its announcement, S21, when people are kind of waiting for this. Avalon front ran this by, I think, a little bit, or Kena, I should say, with their Avalon unit, the A1466. I believe this is the correct one, right? Nice, yeah. 150 terahash, 3,200 watts, power efficiency of 21.5 joules per terahash. I'm 90% sure this is the correct miner. Charlie's shaking his head, yes. Yeah,
I think it is, yeah. And Canaan, however you say it, managed to be the belle of the ball for a few weeks, to get out ahead, say we were announcing the most efficient miner. I think what's interesting is, do you know when this Avalon is actually set to ship? Because I know the S21 actually looks like some of them will land as soon as November. So that's that's very soon is what I see.
That's very soon. I do not know when this is going to ship. It's also interesting. I thought they did like the same sort of like gimmicky X joules per terahash we saw in like a lot of the marketing pamphlets out there, but then this came over the projected joules per terahash.
Yeah, 21. They clearly advertised 1 and then I think an X joule per terahash.
Yeah, so. And for reference, it was like 1x joules per terahash, meaning it was going to be below 20 joules per terahash, but that doesn't seem to be a thing here. That is interesting that they're doing this. Okay. Let's go over and talk about the M60. There's not really that much to talk about, but we'll just mention it really quickly. What's minor not to be outdone is talk about the M60 series. Also, as you can see here, the 1x joules per terahash era is upon us. They're not releasing this until October 24 in Dubai. So the information is expected to come out. I don't know any specs about this or projected specs. Charlie, you might have some information.
I actually don't. I have no information about this right now. Maybe Luxor does, but I would have to dig through some of our kind of channels, man. The thing is, we've learned to we know it when we see it. We'll get them online and we'll see what the real actual hash rate is, you can advertise it, but then it really just does come down to how it performs in the field.
Definitely. No, so for the S21 thing, there is a hydro and there is an air-cooled model. That's a nice bit. To me, the first thing I thought about, and we got some messages about this, was people putting large purchase orders in for XPs, and then also large purchase orders in for MicroBT's M56 series. Just like, why do you go purchase that when, you know, the M60 series is coming about pretty quickly? And I assume there's a hydro model, but maybe that M56 is like the split model between like the M50 series Air, M60 series Air, and maybe M56 is like the hydro in between. I don't know. Like you said, we'll have to find out later. But this is coming about 7 months from the halving or so. So tell me a little bit, Charlie, about like how you think about people upgrading their fleets as of right now.
Well, it's kind of been interesting to see that that a lot of the industry hasn't totally capitulated this past year. I mean, that's been one of the big narratives, and it's because I think a lot of people like me have been surprised at just general public markets and capital interest, kind of changing the capitulation game theory here. And so I think I would expect to see capital continue to try to be injected into these, and a lot of these operators rotate fleets, upgrade them. If you're running on the original S19 or lower efficiency, this seems like it'd be a really good option, especially if you're kind of sitting on your hands, wondering if you're supposed to buy XPs or not. This one's a pretty clear option. It's like this is just a significant efficiency jump. So I would expect a lot of interest from capital pouring into the space over the next 6 months.
You gonna buy one, Matt?
I will not be buying one, but I don't know. I'll take the other side on that because I think it could go either way. I think there's a chance that a lot of the financing plays the wait and see game on the halving to see like what the response is, and maybe some hash rate falling off, maybe some price going up, maybe some combination of the two, or maybe that doesn't happen, right? And those things I think will influence the decision of debt providers, right? And I mean, to be fair though, I'm pretty sure the S21, correct me if I'm wrong, I think they're kind of marketing it as a bit of a discount in this first phase rollout. It's like pretty significant too, like 25-30% of the price. I think it's supposed to be like $14 per terahash in the first phase, but in the second phase, it's supposed to be in like I think it was 18 or 19% or $18 or $19 per terahash. So like pretty significant difference. And so that might be, an incentive for especially like the larger miners that have access to capital markets to get their shipment now, maybe like, kind of front run, keep adding on more. Hash rate's been ripping too. So I don't know. I'm really interested to see the demand for these shipments. If you think about too, the last halving, right? If you think about when the new miners were coming out, then it was like right at the halving time. Like I'm pretty sure the S19 came out in April 2020, and for those listening that aren't aware, the halving was May 2020, right? And so people kind of didn't have to make the decision before the halving. They could kind of see how it went, and then they could buy, and then they could get their shipment and then deploy, right? People are now making decisions like 6 months in advance, and that's a hard game to play because these things are very unpredictable, as we know, right? Modeling miner profitability is not a super easy thing. There's a lot of unknown variables happening. So it'll be interesting to see the demand for these shipments, who's making those decisions, right? Relative to one another, especially.
Yeah, I have this chart up from our friends over at Hash Rate Index, which I guess Charlie is one of our friends there. Sort of, I don't know, you guys do like a lot of different branding.
I guessed right. You'll be seeing me do some more Hash Rate Index stuff. Yeah.
Nice. Luxor owns Hash Rate Index and Ordinal Hub. I don't know. You guys are just growing forever. Soon we're all just going to work for Luxor. You got like this nice sweep of a chart, right? Where we're going, this is the year progression and then like the terahash model. So Up here, you got the M53S++, all the way over S21. Here's the newest one. And then back here in 2020 is the S19. And just see like the efficiency gain, the power gains is pretty amazing to watch. And unfortunate for those of us with S19s that we had a hard time plugging in. Still got 2 of those that have been online for maybe 6 months out of the entire 3 years I've had them. So
yeah, I'd like to see on this chart. I'd also like to see like volume we estimate plug in. Maybe we combine the coin metrics report on estimated not by network makeup by knots with kind of timeline of deployment. That would be a really cool chart. Just throwing that out there.
Kareem, we'll have to ask Kareem for that.
Yeah,
that'd be a great report, by the way.
That'd be pretty sick.
Yeah.
Okay. Unless there's any more thoughts there, we can move over to the last subject for today. Go check out the ASIC index data or hash rate index in general for more information about these units. And then, of course, we'll follow up on this information as it comes out from the major manufacturers. And if you're a miner and you like the show and you want to send me an ASIC, maybe we could do like a teardown on the show. That'd be cool. Okay, let's go and talk about Casey Rodarmor. He is the creator of the Ordinals protocol, or however you guys define the nomenclature these days, Charlie. Charlie has been instrumental and an early adopter of Ordinals and inscriptions, so we are thankful for him to be on the show today. Can you give us like the lay of the land, what's going on here with this blog post that Casey put up this week, and then maybe give us some information, some context for what's been happening with Ordinals since we talked about it over the summer?
Yeah, so getting right to it, Casey has a blog, and that's how I kind of first engaged with him, really. And this blog is kind of informative in his ideation of ordinal theory and inscriptions. And the blog was not updated for a year. And then early this September, he put out a very controversial piece, which was not discovered for a couple of weeks, on kind of the debate now roiling the ordinals ecosystem on renumbering inscriptions. We can talk about that perhaps later, but I participated in this discussion. I've written a piece for Bitcoin Magazine, but about 72 hours ago, maybe 100 hours ago, Casey puts up just this other random piece called Runes, which is not related to ordinals or inscriptions at all, except in that he's just the guy who also came up with both those ideas. And the conversation has kind of been localized to the ordinals enjoyers. Runes is in direct response to the fungible token standard BRC20, which you've talked about, Will. A lot of us in the mining space have talked about, kind of identifying issues with how BRC20 uses Bitcoin really suboptimally, has a lot of ancillary negative effects. And because it's not a UTXO model-based fungible token protocol, very inefficient. Runes is Casey's like throwing a dart in a random direction. Hey, I'm free. I spent some free time ideating on this idea of a UTXO-based fungible token protocol called Runes. Now, Runes, this blog post outlays the idea. That does not come with a spec. And that's actually kind of played into the narrative the past couple days of everybody saying, "Oh, Runes is the thing. I'm going to try to develop my own spec." And it's, again, developed a little bit of controversy and just a lot of speculation and interest. So Casey has said, I don't like fungible tokens. They're a shelling point for deceit, if you will. But regardless, interest was so great. I think he just had to go and be like, okay, this is interesting. How would I implement this? And he threw up a GitHub, and that GitHub has been just absolutely on fire with people discussing issues and ideas. And I didn't even explain how it worked, but that's kind of the big kind of series of events, which has led us to talking about it on this podcast.
Do you want to tell us how it works?
Yeah, so basically the way it works is it uses the operaturn kind of as the messaging and data part of the protocol. So within a UTXO, you have the kind of token information, token ID, amount, and offset within that UTXO. And it's not super clear how you issue these, but it probably requires a non-standard transaction in the form of multiple operaturns. Pay attention, miners. And then it's comparatively efficient in that it theoretically doesn't create a bunch of new random UTXOs just kind of dormant in the UTXO set. That's been a huge issue with specifically BRC20 and then just inscriptions overall. So this is pretty interesting. If I were to like pull back and ask like see what the big picture is, like what's actually happening, is I see this emergence of a narrative of Bitcoin having this data layer, because op return is it's data, and in order to kind of maintain balanced state of this new runic fungible token idea, it requires indexing of Bitcoin's data layer. And that's fascinating because it adds an entirely new dimension to Bitcoin, which people have, I think, not really discussed that much, even though we added, SegWit half a decade ago. So this is really interesting. Whether or not Runes is going to be successful or not, I'm agnostic. I think it's really, really fun at the very least, and certainly has the attention of speculators. Some people try to say it's competing against BRC20. I'd say no. My hope is that just net new shitcoin wealth amasses to Bitcoin, and more people get to fill the UTXO set with probably more efficient, comparatively more interesting data on Bitcoin.
I have a question, Will. If Charlie's okay with us basically just interrogating him about this
okay, I was about to say, don't ask me questions on this. That guy.
Yeah, I mean, so when new things come out, like after the first move, right, I feel like it doesn't really change behavior unless there's like an incentive, right? And I think, like in general, for Bitcoin, pretty unarguably, it's better to have less UTXO bloat. And like, as someone that is just, watching Bitcoin things as an analyst, I actually might have the numbers here in a second. You can see the size of the UTXO set has ballooned since, particularly BRC20s, right? But like ordinals in general, like the last couple months, it's like the amount of transactions that are happening in a block, the UTXO set, and the mempool size are like major differences that you can like basically do a literal cause and effect of like pre-ordinals, post-ordinals. But like, with BRC20, and correct me if I'm wrong, but you would have to, I guess, spend multiple different UTXOs to send multiple different kinds of coins. Is that incorrect? Is that correct?
Dude, yeah. So BRC20, you basically have to create an inscription which acts less as the actual token transfer. It's more of a message of token transfer. And then after that inscription is created, which says I transfer you Matt tokens, that inscription is just there dead. It's not useful anymore. And the kind of knockoff effect of that is that it sits in a UTXO, a newly created UTXO, which is typically at or near the dust limit, which makes it harder to then, or more expensive to spend elsewhere. And then that has created, my wife, for example, works for one of the ordinals wallets, and we have people who have like thousands of dollars and thousands of UTXOs at the dust limit in their wallets doing nothing. This creates kind of not maybe a structural problem, but it's like, this is not good. UTXO sets kept in the memory of the Bitcoin node, that actually makes it more intensive to run the nodes. Kind of a lot of the criticism is like, oh, well, inscriptions are going to fill up the nodes with data, make it hard to run. I don't think that's really as much a concern. The UTXO set bloat actually could be.
Yeah, and I'm like remembering back now, like previous research, looking at op return stuff. The UTXOs, though, and this came about in like a really old Bitcoin software release, but you can prune those UTXOs from the set, right? Wasn't that one of the points of op return? So now I'm like going back and forth in my head of the
this is ancient Bitcoin history, and we're already on the edge of my esoteric Bitcoin knowledge. But Cypher, the smartest person I know in Bitcoin, coworker of mine, says, yeah, there are ways you could prune a UTXO set. There's efficiency like UTXO lightweight stuff like UTXO proposed. Mm-hmm. I'm not really positioned to talk on that right now. I think that's possible. This is interesting. You can do this. I think this design space has barely been explored because it's not really been a problem.
This is I might research that, come back to the next pod and let you guys know. I guess like an outstanding question that I have, right, is, what is the long-term impact of this on block space demand and the fee environment and Bitcoin transactions in general?
You set me up for a great follow-up question. But go ahead, I interrupted you.
No. Good. You go ahead. That's
okay.
Fine.
You guys did like the in-depth UTXO stuff. I want to ask like the meta question. If we keep having competing token standards come to Bitcoin that are not fantastic for the chain for various reasons, does this push us towards including in the future an actual token standard that's designed for Bitcoin? Does this like push us that way?
When the market has put the first shot across the bow that it's interested in putting these things on Bitcoin, that's step one. We could talk all about Bitcoin consensus and how that happens, but if enough people want it to happen, then we might see things like that happen. I don't think that'd be good to do with the base layer, but again, I'm still trying to figure out where I think I stand on a lot of these Bitcoin issues. I think you clearly can accomplish pretty efficient fungible token standards. We see Taproot Assets working on this RGB now. Actually, you can launch these tokens on RGB. Maybe Casey's runic architecture becomes a thing. BRC20 continues to be popular.
That's going to be my question, by the way. It's like long term, what's going to be the method that, because like Taproot Assets, developed by Lightning Labs, right? They want to make this Lightning enabled. I think there's a clear use case and like competition with other competing chains to have like a stable coin that you can whip around on Lightning, right? I think that like makes sense. But there is many different teams out there working on many different methods of basically allowing people to create these kind of customized assets. You just list them out, like RBG, Omni's been around forever, right? And it's like, what's the market going to demand is an outstanding question. I want to quickly say, just for what Will said, I very much set a doubt that Bitcoin and Bitcoin consensus, they'll come up with a standard way to do this and everyone will agree on it, right? Because like, not to like bring in an outside conversation, but that's kind of what Ethereum's doing right now for the way rollups are going to work. They're like going from like this kind of rough and rowdy grassroots way of using call data to now having like blob space and like having like a separate structured way. And I think it kind of takes like a kind of driving foundation, if you will, to kind of like spearhead that one. But you never know with Bitcoin consensus, right? Things get researched, things get proposed, and there's like a process. Anything could happen.
Well, just to follow up on that, like the thing with Ethereum was they just enabled permissionless building, and they had like these token standards that even were just like designed by the market, right? Like, so the ERC20 standard was just like designed by a developer, and then people picked it up and started using it. And it's like not even that efficient. Like if you use MetaMask, it's annoying because you have to like hit accept twice, and you have to like call like twice the network, and it's expensive. There's other token standards that are better, but everyone started building on it because it was permissionless and the market wanted it. I'm wondering if like we're seeing a similar thing with Bitcoin right now, where like we have BRC20s and then people are coming up with competing token standards. And that's where the ball starts rolling, right? Where like Ethereum had ERC20s, and after 5+ years of that, they started realizing this is not good for the base layer. We want to move all these tokens up one layer. And so they made changes to it where all these tokens are getting priced out on the base layer, and they're going to re-architecture the base layer so you can't like really use tokens, or it's not like incentivized to use tokens or move tokens on the base layer, but you are incentivized to use on a layer up. And I wonder if that's what happens in Bitcoin over the next 5 to 10 years. If things like permissionless tokens are going to be a thing, then does the dev community look at this and take another look at like rollups on Bitcoin or drive chains or something like that? And I know that's anathema right now, but You have to look at the similarities of permissionless building and ask the question.
This is a fascinating topic. You brought up rollups. There are at least 4 teams building rollups on Bitcoin now. Because we don't have to soft fork anymore, we can put that opcode in the inscription envelope. Kind of a crazy knockoff effect of this whole ordinals idea. Yeah, one of the things with BRC20 is that it runs into long-term structural problems in its current form in a high fee environment. I just don't see that working if fees do take over a significant amount of block space. But what's interesting, and I don't know if you guys have even seen this because of this past 24 or 36 hours, the kind of foundation which floats and soft governs the BRC20 standard has proposed a kind of module system into which you put your BRC20s. The module system can accomplish various things, but what I see there is a mechanism for migrating the liquidity of these assets to other layers. And I think that BRC20, who knows, it might be super popular for forever, but eventually it does run into some headwinds. And maybe in that case, it does migrate to a better layer. Dude, I don't know. I'm just glad we're talking about this because it's
a spicy idea.
It's new. It's only
Bitcoin podcast you'll hear this talked about. We're not sponsored by.
It's a shame that other podcasts aren't talking about it because although I will say this, Shinobi for CTO of Bitcoin Magazine or chief technical editor has been writing a lot about ordinals and inscriptions. He just published one on runes 2 hours ago. I mean, so you have some very contrarian, hardcore Bitcoiners paying attention to this. So I think
Shinobi back on.
Well, and I found some of my notes about like the effects of this thing. It's hard to ignore when you can like kind of tangibly see the behaviors of people using these things affecting pretty relevant things within the chain itself, right? And I'm strictly talking from a data perspective without opinions on what should be used, what shouldn't be used, et cetera, right? Since February, right, when ordinals really started taking off, we've had 46 million net increase in UTXOs, right? That's a 33% increase in the UTXO set, right, in a couple months. That's pretty crazy. The amount of transactions being settled in a block, and this is kind of like really BRC20 driven, right? Up 40%. 40%. That's crazy, right? From like we're in the 3,000 to 3,500 transaction per block. When beforehand it was like 2,000, 2,500. Like 10 to 20% of block space is basically ordinals based. I mean, you can't ignore it. You may not like it, right? But have an opinion. Maybe read about it. Maybe have an opinion because like it is.
Everything with Bitcoin is a shit coin, in my opinion.
Yeah, we're all shit coiners, I guess.
Yeah, it's okay. Yeah, there have been some funny tweets today. There was one. Actually, I'll let you go first, Charlie, and then I'm gonna pull up a tweet from.
People say Bitcoin is inevitable. I say shitcoin is inevitable. There's no way you can avoid it. It's gonna find you, and you're gonna have to talk about shitcoins. And I would just say, accept it. This is a reality of Bitcoin now, and it's probably not going away anytime soon. So, learn from it. Get involved. Figure out how to solve it. Casey, for as much as he hates BRC20 and doesn't like this idea of creating new, quote, fungible shitcoin token standards, has proposed an actual material solution alternative. And it's what people are talking about. So I consider that a productive conversation.
Yeah, we had this little video really quickly. I'm actually going to show to the audience. It's a 2-minute clip from Eric Wall talking at, I believe, token 2049. It's a pretty great clip. And then we're going to look at Adam Back's response to it. And this is the same conversation. I actually didn't think we'd get into this on the podcast, but just talking about permissionless building of tokens. So let me restart this and then bring it up.
The more important part to understand and recognize is that there's a fight for the soul of Bitcoin going on at the moment between the people that think that success is inevitable and those that feel that we still have something that we have to fight for, that we have to fight for Bitcoin success And there are more of us that are starting to appear over the last year. There's a so-called Bitcoin season 2 emerging. That to me is one of the most bullish signals for Bitcoin, or perhaps the only bullish signal for Bitcoin, seeing as the trodden path that the existing Bitcoin movement for the last couple of years has been headed towards does not in any empirical way appear to lead to any material success in any metric. We're losing on how many transactions the blockchain settles. We're losing on how much value the blockchain settles. We're losing out on being able to use Bitcoin as the #1 unit of account in transactions. There are more people pricing things in Ether than they are in Bitcoin. This is if you want to establish Bitcoin as actually hard money for the world, which could be like, this is a pretty important thing that we're trying to do. Bitcoin might be the only thing that's like a credible threat to the central banking system. I mean, I love Ethereum. I think it's a great alternative, but if we lose Bitcoin, that's a loss. I don't know if the rest of the crypto ecosystem can recover from that loss. Fighting for that culture, having a resurgence of innovation, experimentation on Bitcoin is one of the most important things that we can be fighting for. And if you do that through stacks, drive chains, or ordinals, doesn't really matter. Let's just get back to innovating. Let's get back to building. And if you think that I look like a clown on stage, well, I got news for you people. We are fucking clowns in this industry. Look at FTX. Look at Michael Saylor. Look at Swan. Look at Prime Trust. Look at Fortress. It's frankly a clown show in crypto right now. So we might as well start dressing the part until we get to the point where we actually put the industry back in fashion. And when we get to that point, then we can suit up and say that, okay, success is inevitable. So I look exactly like the way that the industry is in the moment.
That's a great clip. Great clip.
He's got away with words.
Are we talking about it? I got some thoughts.
Yeah, well, okay, so here's the follow-up really quickly is we have Adam back tweeting, meh, stacks, ordinals, or drive chains equals shitcoin. Highly regarded, which is crypto speak for retarded, giftless, NFT, and interesting, but not yet available. Some of us are building the future and we're not wearing wizard costumes. I think it's just a new grift, Bitcoin adjacent, quote unquote, innovation during the alt bear. Had to throw that tweet in there. Matt, Charlie, any thoughts on this? I didn't think we were going to get to this topic on today's show, but it has been like a pretty loud week on Twitter.
My response would be, for better or worse, probably Zach's response to that exact tweet, which I don't remember what it is, but it's like, aren't you the CEO of a sidechain company, which has a bunch of assets issued on it and not a lot of success? I mean, Adam Back is a god in the cypherpunk movement. But he's also a human. He bleeds. We all make mistakes and have dumb takes. I think this is a dumb take of his.
So my thing is that this isn't like a cultural war that's like just starting now. Like, this has been something that's been talked about on Bitcoin Talk forums since like 2010, 2011. So I don't think there's like a big fight for the soul of Bitcoin. I would challenge that phrasing, right? And say that this is an ongoing conversation that's happened over time. And there's been many different tried methods, right, of doing it. And really, maybe it hasn't been as loud as it is now because a lot of the people that were very passionate in the past went to build other networks and tried other things, right? Or like, hence Ethereum. Right? Vitalik, right, first proposed basically Ethereum-based ideas because of Mastercoin. Right. And like colored coins, like a Bitcoin thing. Right. And then went to do it somewhere else because it wasn't really a part of, not to rehash the history, but a part of Bitcoin philosophy. I think another thing is like, I don't necessarily think ordinals drive chains, like these things, Terra, whatever you want, or I guess Taproot assets now. I don't necessarily think that has a strong effect on the fight against central banks and the monetization of Bitcoin, right? Like, Bitcoin as an asset's like being adopted, and really it's like an emerging market story. Like, it's places where people need it the most, right? And there's many reasons for that. And we can do an entire pod on that another time. What these things are more about is like the utility of block space. It's like using the Bitcoin chain for other things outside of just monetary transfers. And I think the outstanding question is, and people have views on whether this should be a thing or not at all, but it's like, kind of, how do you doctor a lot of the traditional financial system, the financial services that are valuable to people on top of Bitcoin? And there's a lot of technical arguments that go into that, and people get very passionate about it. I mean, even this week, something that I don't think we'll get into on the pod today is that there was a covenants proposal that came out, right?
We should talk about that.
There's never a dull moment in Bitcoin, right? These are ongoing conversations, but I guess like in that way, I would challenge some of the things he said, but he is also helping further, I think, the conversation, and I think that's a good thing. Whether you do that in a wizard costume or not, I think that's a good thing.
No, definitely no dull moments in Bitcoin. I mean, it is in the midst of the bear market, but I think people are actively wondering what the next BIP is, and the next BIP could be something that fundamentally just changed like the nature of block space. So that's why people are so up in arms about it. Also, we just need like a really good green candle. Maybe we'll all be happy again. Okay, let's close out there for this week. 3 awesome topics. Thank you both, Charlie and Matt, for joining. Follow these guys on Twitter. You can find their handles in the show notes. Go subscribe to our new YouTube page. It is Blockspace Media. So just type in Blockspace Media on YouTube. You should find us. Hopefully there's not a bigger channel with that name. But you can find the YouTube version of this if you want to look at our faces. If you are listening to us, please give us a 5-star review on your podcast platform of choice. That is how people actually find us, is by saying that we have good recommendations. So go do that, and maybe share us on Twitter as well. Thank you guys, and we'll see you next week for another interview. Peace.
Cheers.